Hey guys, this is Donovan from New School Poker. I wanted to talk today. This series that I'm doing right now is aimed sort of at bringing tight, aggressive players into the new poker era, kind of getting them up to speed on some of the other options that we have besides raising and folding. There is a play called calling. So let's take a look at a hand that I might have played 3 or 4 years ago, and I think a lot of players are still doing things like this. Okay, so we could be playing 6 max, 9 max, full ring, whatever, doesn't matter. He raises late position. We think we have the best hand, so we 3-bet. Everybody folds around, and he 4-bets us, and we fold our ace-jack. Okay, so let's look at this again. When all of your opponents fold except for late position and he opens, we figure our hand is going to be better than most of the hands in our opponent's range. So does that mean that we should be re-raising? Not necessarily. And this is really big, really huge, paramount. It's a new thing to a lot of people. I kind of struggled with it and fought it tooth and nail in a lot of ways, but really this is what it comes down to. When we're deciding what we're going to do, okay, we know we're going to continue. We know we're going to play the hand. There are a lot of things that we need to consider. We need to consider our position. We need to consider a lot of variables, but in this exact scenario, the only things we need to ask ourselves really, if we re-raise here, what do we accomplish? What does our 3-bet accomplish? With a hand like king, queen, ace, jack, pocket eights, gappers, these are hands that are normally going to be better than our opponent's average opening hand, but they're going to be behind most of the range he will call or re-raise us with if we 3-bet. When you have a hand like that, then you really need to consider calling. So our opponent is opening with a lot of like 10-jack, pocket pairs, king X, jack X, ace X stuff, a lot of which we don't want to fold out. We want to take flops against. It's not good enough anymore to just be razor fold, good pre-flop poker player. Just because we're ahead of our opponent's range, that does not mean we raise. We have to think, if I raise, will my opponent fold a better hand? And the answer to that question is probably not. If I raise, can my opponent call with a worse hand? And again, I think that's a resounding no. If he does have a worse hand and decides to continue, I think he's going to raise, and we're not going to be able, and this is the other question, can I call, or can I flat call his 4-bet, or can I even consider shoving against his 4-bet? If the answer to all of those questions is no, then you can never raise. So in this particular hand, we're going to be much better off just flat calling. Our hand is going to play very well post-flop against our opponent's opening range, but if we raise and he calls, then we don't necessarily, and in fact, we won't often have the best hand. So that's something you really need to start thinking about and taking into consideration while you're making this raise or fold decision, because there are more than 2 options in poker. You can call, and I think that a lot of tight aggressive players will see an instant return on investment increase if they watch and absorb the information in this video. Okay, so this is a pretty similar situation. Okay, we're on the button here, so we have position, and our opponents fold. Not sure, just kind of slowing down. Okay, our opponents fold to the cutoff position. The cutoff raises, and we have king queen, and we have to decide whether to raise or to call or to fold. And yes, again, our hand is better than our opponent's range. We probably have the best hand here, but we have to ask, will he call with anything worse if we raise him? Probably not. And will he fold anything better? There's not a lot of hands that are better that he'll fold, and there's not much that's worse that he's going to call with. And we have position on him, which is another huge thing, so we call. Now, if he was on the dealer button and we had king, queen suited from the blinds, then maybe we can consider re-raising or 3-betting, just simply because, you know, we don't want to play out of position, and it's not the most horrible thing in the world if our opponent folds like a 9-10 suited or small pocket pair, and we certainly don't hate if he folds like an ace-10 or something like that. So that could be different, but in position we generally want to be making that a call more than anything. Okay, so this is a hand I actually played against a payoff wizard maniac. Okay, this is an isolation raise. Okay, we're just going to take a look at the hand and kind of discuss what we're doing and why. Okay, so we flop top pair, which is good. Opponent checks, we bet, he calls. Kind of the same situation here. Check, bet, call. Things get a little bit interesting on the river. Total brick, opponent donks into us. We're getting 3 to 1 plus. We call, and he's got the worst hand. So, yeah, let's look at the hand again. Okay, I know this guy, and he is very maniacal with his bluffing, and he's very passive and calling state. He calls very light. So his mistake propensity pre-flop is he limps in too much and he doesn't raise enough. We want to punish him for that and take advantage of that. But especially his mistake propensity after the flop. I know that this opponent he doesn't have a fold button after the flop. If he sees the flop, he's going to probably see it to the end. The way this guy was playing, and I've got tons of hands on this guy and I've got a lot of notes, if he has air like nothing, he's raising, re-raising, bluffing a lot of the time. Whenever he has like middle pair or bottom pair or like a pocket pair in between top and middle or top and second pair, he's just checking and calling, and he'll check and call 3 streets. He always check calls his draws, and he always bluffs on his misses. So he's always betting whether he hits or misses his draws. So when you have a player who's kind of fishy, and you have a good amount of information on him, and you understand his mistake propensities, you need to take advantage of that information and try to get absolute position in the hand and try to get him heads up. So that's what we're doing when we isolate. So the flop comes out, and I'm loving the flop. My opponent checks. I know my opponent is going to make a lot of calling mistakes here. He will call me with any jack. He will call me 3 streets with any queen. And with most of his jacks, he's either going to check, call, and he might even try throwing in like a raise or like a bluff raise. So I'm going to bet for value. I don't know that he has anything at all, but I do want him to be able to float me with like ace-king type stuff. So I think we want to go for sort of a standard half pot bet where he can maybe float it and then try to steal on the turn. So I bet here, knowing he's like never folding, even if he has air, he's most of the time gonna just bet this card, especially if it's an ace or a king or a spade, and I can call against all those. So that was why I made the play I did. I understand my opponent's mistake propensities. Okay, so I know that he's going to either bluff here, and I'm never folding, or he's going to check, and I'm never checking, I'm always betting. So he checks, I bet strictly for pure value against his pretty wide range here. Any jack, he can have any queen, he can have lots of draws, so we just definitely want to take advantage of the information that we have and bet. So he checks on the turn, and I bet, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get to it for some reason. But we already saw what happened on the river. He donked into me for reasons unknown, right? Doesn't really make any sense for him to do that. But so the way that the hand actually turned out, what is going on here, is he ended up turning his flush draw into a bluff, and I was able to pick that off. I was able to snap it off because I knew my opponent. I knew my opponent's mistake propensity. So these are the types of things that we need to be thinking about when we play, and especially pre-flop for the tight aggressive players that aren't that familiar with this play. When you see a player limping into the pot, ace-queen is nowhere near the bottom of your ISO range. I'm going to isolate this guy with like anything that can flop equity. I have position on him. I know how he plays. He's limping, which already shows that he probably doesn't have a super strong hand, and he's probably not very good at poker. So that is how we arrived at those decisions. I'm going to take a look at this if we can. This is kind of bugging out a little bit, but let's see if we can't get the entire hand to play. Yeah, so in this hand that we were looking at before, my opponent bets and I call with top pair. Then he checks, I bet, and he folds. So that's something you need to note. Now remember, if I re-raise pre-flop, he either shoves and I fold, or he calls with a better hand, or folds and I don't win as much money. So now we can make a note. It's okay to float this guy. You know, he's going to make continuation bets without a hand, check the turn, and we can bluff him off of a lot of hands. Some things to think about. I'm going to wrap the video up here because we're coming close to our time limit. So until next time, good quote luck, end quote.